Adam Wexler, founder of PrizePicks, and now gainfully unemployed. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously exiting PrizePicks, I kind of want to ask you about, the end of the run there, why you're getting out now. Let's start with that.
Well, it was over a decade that I was, in the gaming industry day to day. I got in the early summer of 2014.
Yeah.
PrizePicks came about. It was our third product in the fantasy sports industry. It came about in late 2017. And so I was CEO of the business for over 10 years. Handed over the keys about a year and a half ago. It's probably about a year and a half ago at this point. It was late July of 24. And then I was executive chairman for a year and a half. And then upon the close of the deal, that was also my last day officially at PrizePicks.
So let's take a step back in time for a moment. Obviously, there are those in the space familiar with PrizePicks, but what was kind of the initial idea you had? Why did you think this was an innovation? What's become like a very crowded space? Why could it work?
So what got me in is I'm a lifelong, season-long fantasy league player, and every fall would roll around, and 12 friends or more would get together, and we would all want to throw in a little money into the pot to make it a little interesting, but nobody would want to be responsible for collecting the funds to raise the stakes basically. And so I spotted that problem every single fall. Would play fantasy baseball as well, so it was a recurring problem that I would notice. And then finally I said, as a technology entrepreneur since the beginnings of my career, so I'm going to go solve that problem and make life easier for the commissioner. And it was what I described as the most thankless job in the world at the time. No credit, only people complaining. And so that's what got me into the industry. Quickly realized that was a very seasonal problem that I was trying to solve, and then we said, what else can we do with this digital treasurer of sorts that we've created? And that's what led us to this concept of side bets. So we're playing each other in our fantasy league right now. Like, let's put $100 to make the season long, kind of chop it up more week to week. And that started kind of moving me down the path of the season long to daily kind of spectrum. And we actually won a number of awards in the industry in 2015, and then we were winning those awards, and we're the darling of the industry. And then the industry kind of came collapsing down when FanDuel and DraftKings went very aggressive in fall of 2015, and the AGs came in, and so it was very bleak for a little while. But then fast forward to fall of 2017, and there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's when I had come up with the concept for PrizePicks based off of some learnings from the prior two, and just kind of hit the ground running there.
Obviously, the fantasy sports market, you referenced it back in 2015, kind of to fall under regulatory scrutiny. Things evolved. Obviously, now we're at a point where fantasy sports isn't just, clear and easy. Sports gambling, prediction markets even have taken over kind of the space. How do you look at that evolution, and kind of where do you think it's going from here?
I think one thing that is not very well understood is that the origins of everything you were just describing is probably rooted in daily fantasy sports in America. Obviously we've had season-long fantasy since, generations ago at this point.
Yeah. Daily
fantasy was really rooted in this carve-out from 2006, the UIGEA carve-out, UGEA. People have different pronunciations. And it was 2009 where, FanDuel's founder kind of really got going with what we call DFS 1.0, mostly the salary cap format. And then obviously that picked up a lot of steam for the next 6 years before it kind of came to a screeching halt, as I referenced. And it was that whole sequence of events in like 2015-16 that I think really accelerated the Supreme Court case that was the sports betting case.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, New Jersey wins, and every state can legalize sports betting. And obviously what happened in OSB then I would argue maybe accelerated prediction markets, because everybody was saying, well, why don't we make this federal? Why does it have to be a state-by-state kind of, patchwork, situation? And so all of a sudden, it's ironic that prediction markets are making the bulk of their money in our world because people were looking for a federal solution to sports betting in America, basically.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because obviously prediction markets are asking people to basically ask all these different questions now about how things should be regulated, what is actually gambling, what's not. PrizePicks kind of straddled the line there a little bit. It was more fantasy sports side, but also kind of, ventured a little kind of into the gambling space. How did you kind of deal with, I guess, like the ethical criticism of this isn't one product, it's another, or it's a gateway to another product that's not necessarily as regulated as it should be?
As I said earlier, I mean, for one, like, the law was always on our side. We were clearly a fantasy sports solution even though some of the competitors wanted to depict us otherwise. So let's be abundantly clear about that. But no, I mean, in general, like, this, once again, I go back to kind of how I kind of progressed through the industry. Like, as a consumer, I'm a season-long fantasy guy. I came up with a solution for season-long fantasy commissioners, fantasy league commissioners. Then I said, let's break up the season, because those tend to drag on for 4, 5, 6 months depending on the sport. That's what led me to kind of a weekly real money solution. And then the third product was more of a daily variety, but I loved the concept of daily fantasy sports. I hated the previous execution because I knew that DFS 1.0 wasn't going to appeal to me as a consumer. And I said, I know a lot of my friends don't play those games either, just because they're spending boatloads of money to try to tell us that we should play those games in 2015 and 16 doesn't mean that they have a mainstream appeal. And that's where we basically looked at the laws that were getting drawn up on a state level, 2015-16, and we built a solution based off of those laws that were defined by fantasy sports specific laws.
I'm sure you had quite the legal bills when you're consulting all these lawyers constantly. So, deal with Allwyn. You're exiting the business. $2.5 billion deal. Possible options to get it up over past 4. Why was this the right partner? Why did this deal make sense? Why is it time to step away?
Yeah, we had come across them, or I'd connected with them in actually 2020. Was the original touch point, and they were always clear that when they wanted to make a play, it was going to be a majority stake. So that was the one thing that kind of stuck in my mind from the earliest interactions, 2020, 2021. And then so those conversations kind of really kind of got moving again in, I guess early about a year ago. And I mean, I think as it's hopefully clear by now, like they have very big ambitions, and they are a lottery-led entertainment company that is now essentially going toe-to-toe with Flutter. And I think most people that study this space are familiar with Flutter, obviously FanDuel's parent company, but they're coming at it from different angles. Right? And, I think we are very clearly as a whole, Allwyn, and I'm obviously not there to speak for Allwyn, but it's an entertainment company. That's something that we were always very aligned with, whereas a number of the companies in the space are gambling companies. But we are entertainment, all about the customer first, what we called originally member first, now we call it player first, but it's always been at the heart of kind of what we do.
Well, this has been your baby for over a decade, so there had to be some degree of comfort in trusting it to this company. What about their ambitions or their plans really appealed to you? Because obviously, you're not going to be involved, but you want to see a business that you invested so much time in do well. So what are you excited about for them? What do you see the future there?
So for one, we are essentially their big entry point into the United States. They had they have a contract with the Illinois Lottery, so they kind of started there. But obviously, this is on a much different scale and magnitude. It's just exciting to have, as I said in my LinkedIn post recently, they're just going to really allow us to turbocharge kind of all of our plans, and then we're just going to figure out exactly how to navigate the new world. All of a sudden, prediction markets is the hot new thing that nobody necessarily would have predicted 2 years ago, but here we are, and I think we have that offering inside of our app these days. And for the longest time, we were DFS only. Our first kind of step into another gaming vertical was prediction markets. So I think then the question becomes, what other gaming verticals do we want to explore over time? But obviously that's not for me to discuss. We've got other people at the helm these days.
What do you see kind of for the future for sports gambling in the US and kind of the advent of prediction markets? Because on the gambling side, we still have markets like California and Texas, who we're all waiting for them to come online. And I don't know when, but it's expected to happen eventually. Prediction markets have circumvented that to a certain degree, and there's kind of debates about regulation there. How do you see the next 5 to 10 years playing out in that space?
Considering all that's happened over the last year, it's very difficult to look 5, 10 years out.
I know, right?
But I would say you got prediction markets. It'll be fascinating to see how that kind of plays out over the next couple of years, especially as a new administration is set to come in a couple of years, because they may look at it differently. What I do think is that the main kind of topic that's kind of the debatable one right now is, should sports inside of prediction sport, the closest thing to sports betting, be a federal thing that is allowable through prediction markets. Whereas I think all the other predictions, weather predictions, crypto predictions, all that stuff, that's less debatable, and nobody's really focused on that right now. But obviously, the bulk of the money that's being made is being made through sports-related predictions.
Do you worry about bad actors there?
I think having been through having gone through the motions with a nascent industry that I'd say was kind of DFS plus, DFS 2.0.
Yeah.
We had to do things that were we were making sure that if the regulations don't exist, we're going to basically self-regulate in many respects, right? So I do think that the kind of the companies that you hear about all the time in the news these days, Kalshi, Polymarket, that are out front with this industry, they really need to be have self-regulation kind of top of mind, and hopefully they're going to lead properly from the front.
In just building your industry expertise though, like how do you think about kind of the ethical question that sometimes people raise? Do we need more daily fantasy? Do we need more gambling? Do we need these prediction markets? Like enough is enough, like let it be one thing, but let's not figure out 1,000 permutations to it. How do you kind of respond to when people kind of make those arguments?
Yeah, what's interesting is, a couple of years ago when I was still, sitting in the CEO seat, we made a conscious decision to describe ourselves or change our purpose as not just trying to be a digital sports entertainment brand that's going to outlast our lifetimes, but actually trying to be a sports and culture brand that's going to outlast our lifetimes.
Yeah.
And what better place to build that company than out of Atlanta, where culture is our biggest export. In doing so, one of the things that I was trying to get across was, hey, we're not just going to be doing athlete predictions.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing predictions beyond sports, right? And so, having come from the music industry, I always thought, like, for example, the music charts was a very interesting niche that could be gamified again. Because I grew up with the music charts, Total Request Live, and there's been a big part of my life. You never hear people talking about the music charts, and there's a lot of issues that might be associated these days. So that's where kind of my head was, and I was exploring all the different varieties of predictions that could be made for free for prizing. And in that exploration and doing my kind of own diligence, I came across these nascent startups named Polymarket and Kalshi. And through my some of my investor network, I basically said, hey, can you introduce me to those people running those companies? Yeah. And when they heard that the PrizePicks founder and CEO wanted to talk to them, they were super excited to hear from me. Yeah. And so this is before anybody was paying attention, to those guys. And it was interesting that they were asking me questions about sports, and I was asking them questions about weather and, some of these other things.
Did you get a chance to invest?
I did not, but, I'm doing just fine with
here nor there, nor anywhere. Obviously you spent a lot of time running this company through different Super Bowls. I'm wondering, how's the Super Bowl ecosystem changed around you?
This is probably my, I guess my fourth Super Bowl like this. I remember, one of my favorite stories to point back to is, it was the Super Bowl in LA. Maybe I guess it was only 4 years ago, and we were still for the most part a bootstrap startup. We never raised VC capital, and we were always largely growing off of our own revenue, some angel funding, and then some creative debt financing. And so we came out here 4 or 5 years ago on a tight budget, and couldn't go to the game, didn't have the plugs to go to a game, nothing like that. And we're holed up in a little hotel room watching the game, and the Rams are in it at home. Odell Beckham's having a phenomenal game, and all of a sudden he goes down to an injury.
Blew out his knee.
And you could see it. That looked like a torn ACL or something of the variety. Yeah. And so we had been prepping for a moment like that where, okay, if we're truly a player first operator, what do you do in that situation? In that situation, if you have your money, if Odell's part of your lineup and he's about to hit all of his numbers, and then all of a sudden he can't because he's physically incapable of coming back into the game, what do? Do you tell your customers tough shit, or do you tell them we've got your back? Yeah. And so we sprang into action. We said, look, we've got your back. We're going to act as if it was a DNP. He just act like he didn't play because he didn't have his number. And your 4-pick lineup, we're going to turn that into a 3-pick lineup, and you're still in play. And when we did this kind of first big stage for the concept of injury insurance, the entire industry kind of it was a very commotion.
It's a popular thing now. Yeah.
All of a sudden, a year or two later, it became table stakes in DFS. And then a year or two after that, it's now becoming table stakes in OSB, and you see that literally on the commercials with the sports betting operators.
Yeah. Thinking back to kind of that point, like you said, small, bootstrapped. Before you're on your way out, to what scale did you get to? You know, how big were revenues? How big did the profitability get? Like, what did that look like? What can you tell us?
I think it was in our kind of press release when we actually announced the sale back in the fall. But we got to 9 figures in EBITDA. I think a lot of people were surprised at just how well the business was doing.
Yeah.
It's just, once again, I mean, we were extremely fortunate that we were able to find a very healthy business model with a game that people love to play at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was the best of all worlds, both from an operation as well as from a customer, standpoint as well.
So what's next for you? Are you retiring to a beach somewhere to live out your days in peace?
Some people would believe that that's the case, and they act when they send me emails as if I have all the time in the world. The fact of the matter is I've actually never been more busy, a lot more to come soon. But I'm going to announce it. We're going to announce it here very soon that I'm getting back to my roots. I've got multiple things cooking within the entertainment spectrum, and so you're about to see me become a much more front-facing founder over the next year and tell the stories of PrizePicks, while also talking about all the other stuff that I've got brewing as well. And so I'm excited to kind of get back to my entrepreneurial roots, and it's most of these things that I've got cooking are at a very early stage, and this is where I also thrive in those kind of environments too. And so building those teams and scaling them up is really exciting for me.
Before I let you go, I got to ask, Super Bowl best bet, best pick, best prop, what do you got for me?
Well, the funny thing is, we would always take the action, right, and take the prediction. So, look, personally, I would prefer to see the Seahawks win. The coach of the Seahawks actually came out of a similar program that I did from the University of Georgia. We were both in the leadership, program, which is not even very many people on campus. So really just want to, support him, and it's really impressive what he's doing, and, hoping for a good game if nothing else.
Adam Wexler, thanks for being here with us today.
Appreciate it.